And now it's time for another edition of What Would Jello Do? Having the thick skull I sometimes do, it never even occurred to me before tonight that I should be thanking you for paying attention to all these What Would Jello Do's and supporting all my music and spoken word and all the other things all these years where I can still somehow survive off my big mouth and bad attitude. That is a privilege. It's even what some people call a blessing. And I wouldn't be able to do any of it unless all of you were helping. Didn't just dig my stuff, but were helping. And for what would Jello do? People said sometimes, well, what you really need to do is a podcast. Podcast, schmodcast, what's that? I don't even do interviews on podcasts because I'm too ignorant to know how important they are now. Well, then COVID hits. Tea Party Revenge Porn, the last Guantanamo School of Medicine album comes out, and I got to promote the hell out of it somehow. So I do all these interviews on other people's podcasts. I got Zoom down and the whole thing, and I thought, hey, wait a minute. I always kind of wanted to try a talk show sometime, call it Renegade Roundtable, and actually have other guests and do that kind of thing. But then with the podcast, I thought, hey, wait a minute. I don't have to build a studio. I don't have to hire a big camera crew. It doesn't have to be all this fancy stuff. You can just do it. So brace yourself, everybody, for Renegade Roundtable. Yes, this is my new podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. It does not mean the end of What Would Jello Do. I'll still be doing those off the cuff and on the fly anyway. But now it's not just me over and over again. You get to hear me versus guests of honor and dishonor. Al Jorgensen, Greg Palast, Mojo Nixon, Mike Watt, Fred Armisen, all kinds of people, ultimately about all kinds of things. And like What Would Jello Do, it's going to be sporadic. You may have 3 or 4 suddenly come up within a week or less, and then there will be many, many, many more weeks before any more come up, depending on my whim and basically what's going on in the world. I mean, at some point, it's going to be Eugene Hutz about what's going on in Ukraine, the singer for retraining singer for Gogol Bordello, for example. And yes, folks, to get it up on all those platforms, the Apples, the Spotifys, the big bad gorillas and everything, so anybody can get it anywhere in the world, available where you get your podcasts. It means it goes out through Acast, through an umbrella called Weirder Together through Acast. But since it's Acast, yes, there's going to be short ads. Before, 1 or 2 in the middle, after, you name it. I do have some control over what ads get run. They sent me a block form, and originally I was going to block everything except funeral parlors, but then I decided I could do a little better than that. And that is the new Renegade Roundtable audio podcast, guaranteed to blow your mind based on the interview I did with Al Jorgensen earlier today. Yes. And so eventually, there will also be a video version on Alternative Tentacles YouTube somehow, and in all likelihood, that's going to somehow get monetized as well. But remember, the money is not going to me. It's going to Alternative Tentacles because we need the money. You know, it's really hard to survive as a little label who puts out the kind of stuff out of the mainstream that we do, especially when the crunch to get vinyl pressed and everything, it takes a year or more sometimes, and they want the money ahead of time. Then you have to try and sell them and stuff like that. So the so-called cash flow is just doing us in, basically. So that's where all the money's going to go. Not for me, but to help, well, my favorite label anyway, whose catalog I wouldn't trade for any other labels in the world, Alternative Tentacles, Jello Biafra's Renegade Roundtable. If this is of interest, spread the word. Check it out.